Captain Jorel Vastic slumped into his command chair, 6 tentacle limbs splaying in frustration as he stared at the observation screen. The Galactic exploratory fleet vessel Distant Wonder had been orbiting this backwater planet, designation T3, locally called Earth, for nearly 3 standard cycles. 3 miserable cycles. Captain, Science Officer Pelna hummed from her station, antennae twitching. The human settlement shows increased activity. Perhaps today something of scientific value will actually occur. Jorel couldn't help but notice the sarcasm dripping from his officer's mandibles. He couldn't blame her. The entire crew was feeling it. The crushing boredom of monitoring what had to be the most mundane sentient species ever discovered. I doubt it, Jorel muttered, brushing a tentacle across his facial ridges. What are the primitives doing now? Arguing over territory boundaries? Complaining about their atmospheric conditions? Oh wait, let me guess, they're staring at their primitive communication devices again. The observation deck erupted in chittering laughter. At least his crew still appreciated his humor. Actually, Captain, Pelna clicked. 2 humans appear to be venturing into the forest beyond their settlement. They're carrying several primitive tools. Hunting expedition, perhaps. Jorel's interest flickered momentarily. Hunting? Well, that's marginally less boring than watching them consume processed nutrition blocks. Put on the main viewer. The massive screen shifted from the human settlement to a dense forest landscape. 2 bipedal figures trudged through undergrowth, their forms tiny against the towering vegetation. Magnify and enhance, Jorel ordered, straightening slightly. The image zoomed, revealing 2 humans, one taller with darker fur on its head, the other shorter with lighter head fur. Both carried long metallic objects that the research team had identified as primitive projectile weapons. Ah yes, look at them, the so-called apex species of their planet, Jorel said with a dismissive wave. Slow, fragile creatures relying on crafted tools because evolution gave them absolutely nothing useful. Navigation Officer Draz turned from his station. I still don't understand why Central Command insisted we study them so extensively. They are centuries away from proper space travel. Their atmosphere is poisonous to nearly every galactic species. They have developed 0 telepathic abilities. Politics, Jorel sighed. Some high-ranking official's offspring wrote a thesis on potential evolutionary paths of oxygen breathers or some such nonsense. Captain, Pelna's voice suddenly raised an octave. Thermal sensors are picking up a massive life form approaching the humans. It's a dominant predator species of their region. Jorel perked up, all 6 eyes focusing on the screen. Now, this might be interesting. Enhance view and activate audio receptors. The screen sharpened further, capturing the humans' conversation as they moved deeper into the forest. Look, Thomas, I'm telling you, this is the perfect spot, the shorter human was saying. My grandfather used to bring me here every season. Best hunting on the Eastern Ridge. Whatever you say, Frank, the taller one, Thomas replied. But if we don't bag something decent today, you are buying drinks for a month. Deal, Frank laughed. Speaking of which, did you bring the... A terrifying roar interrupted their conversation, resonating through the ship's audio systems and causing several crew members to recoil instinctively. What was that? Jorel demanded, suddenly alert. Pelna's claws danced across her console. Ursus arctos horribilis, sir. The humans call it a grizzly bear. Apex predator. Massive, territorial, and extremely dangerous. On screen, the enormous creature burst through the foliage. It stood on powerful hind legs, towering over the humans, mouth open in a terrifying display of teeth and aggression. Holy mother of... Thomas screamed, stumbling backward. Frank raised his weapon, but the bear swatted it away with a massive paw, sending it flying into the underbrush. The shorter human fell backward, scrambling away as the predator advanced. Well, Jorel said with grim satisfaction, I suppose we are about to document the natural selection process of humans. Tragic for the specimens, but scientifically valuable. The command deck fell silent as the crew watched. This was exactly the kind of planetary interaction data they'd been sent to collect, the natural predator-prey dynamics of Earth's ecosystem. But what happened next caused every alien on the observation deck to freeze in incomprehension. Thomas, the taller human, didn't run. Instead, he did something so completely unexpected that Joral's respiratory siphons temporarily ceased functioning. He charged toward the bear. "Frank, run!" Thomas bellowed, waving his arms wildly over his head. "Get to the truck. I will distract it." "What is it doing?" Joral whispered, 6 eyes widening simultaneously. The bear, momentarily confused by this counterintuitive behavior, hesitated. Then it roared again and dropped to all fours, preparing to charge. "The human is dead," Navigation Officer Draz stated flatly. "Computing likelihood of survival, 0%. But Thomas wasn't finished with his baffling behavior. As the bear charged, the human darted sideways, grabbed a fallen branch nearly as large as himself, and swung it with all his might directly at the predator's head. The impact was audible even through the ship's audio systems. The bear stumbled, shaking its massive head in confusion and rage. That should be physically impossible," Pelna stammered. "Our data indicates human musculature is remarkably inefficient compared to evolved predator species. The force required to look at its face." Security Chief Marvox interrupted, pointing a clawed appendage at the screen. "The human is it displaying aggression signals?" Indeed, Thomas's face had contorted into what the crew had previously categorized as the human anger expression. But this was something beyond their recorded examples. This was primal, terrifying, a rictus of fury that seemed to transform the soft, vulnerable features into something ancient and dangerous. "You want some of this?" Thomas screamed at the bear, spittle flying from his mouth. Come on then." The bear, apparently stunned by this incomprehensible response from what should have been easy prey, hesitated again. "The human is demonstrating territorial behavior," Pelna said, her scientific detachment clearly struggling against her obvious shock. "It's challenging the apex predator for dominance." "That's suicide," Joral stated flatly. "Nothing in our biological surveys suggests humans have any natural defenses against such predators. Their skin is thin, their claws are vestigial, they lack significant teeth." On screen, the bear recovered from its confusion and charged again. This time, Thomas didn't manage to dodge completely. One massive paw caught him across the shoulder, tearing fabric and flesh. The human cried out, but remained standing. "Blood!" Pelna exclaimed. "The human is damaged. Now survival probability is definitely 0, Draz added. But Thomas, bleeding and facing certain death, did the incomprehensible. He laughed, a wild, terrible sound that echoed through the forest and sent chills through every alien observer. "Is that all you have got?" he roared back at the bear. "My grandmother hits harder than you." Is the human malfunctioning?" asked Medical Officer Tseen, speaking for the first time. "Perhaps it's experiencing a neurological breakdown from fear?" Joral had no answer. Nothing in their extensive briefings on Earth species had prepared them for this. In the forest clearing, Thomas had backed himself against a large tree. The bear approached more cautiously now, clearly sensing something was wrong with this prey. This wasn't how the natural order was supposed to work. "Come on," Thomas growled, his voice dropping to something primeval. "You want to dance? Let's dance." The bear lunged again, and this time, Thomas dove directly under the massive creature, using its forward momentum against it. The bear crashed headfirst into the tree trunk with a sickening thud. "Physical adaptation," Pelna exclaimed. "The human is using the limited joint mobility of the larger predator against it." Before the bear could recover, Thomas was on its back, arms wrapped around its neck in what appeared to be an attempt to strangle it. "This is impossible," Joral whispered. "No sentient prey species would ever evolve this behavior." On the forest floor, a desperate struggle ensued. Thomas clung to the bear's back as it bucked and twisted, trying to dislodge him. Blood, both the humans and now the bears, stained the forest floor. "Captain," Pelna said quietly, "the human's vital signs are declining. Significant blood loss, elevated heart rate, Stress hormones off our measurement scale. But it's not stopping. Indeed, despite what must have been excruciating pain, Thomas maintained his grip, tightening his hold around the bear's throat while the animal thrashed wildly. "Frank!" Thomas screamed between gritted teeth. "The gun! Get the damn gun!" The other human, who had been watching in frozen horror from a distance, suddenly snapped into action. He scrambled through the underbrush, searching desperately for the weapon the bear had knocked away. "Sir," Security Chief Marvox said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued, "should we intervene? Our non-interference protocols normally prohibit it, but this is not a natural scenario." Jorel hesitated. The regulations were clear: observe only, never interfere with the natural development of pre-contact species. But nothing about this situation seemed natural. "No," he finally decided. "We continue observation. This is unprecedented data." On screen, the bear had finally managed to throw Thomas off. The human crashed against a boulder, and even from orbit, the crew could hear the sickening crack of breaking bones. Multiple fractures detected. Medical officer at scene reported clinically. Ribs, possibly clavicle. Internal bleeding likely. "Now, it ends," Draz said with something like relief. Nature would restore its proper order, but Thomas struggled to his feet, wavering but upright. Blood coated half his face from a gash on his forehead. His left arm hung at an odd angle. He was clearly severely injured, yet he smiled. "That all you got, Fuzzy?" he panted, wiping blood from his eyes. "I've had worse from a bar fight in Pittsburgh." The entire command deck fell silent. What is this species?" Jorel finally whispered. The bear, also injured now and clearly confused by this unnatural prey that refused to die properly, bellowed in frustration. It reared back on its hind legs again, towering nearly 9 feet tall, a massive wall of muscle, teeth, and claws designed by evolution to kill. Thomas, this fragile bipedal creature with no natural weapons whatsoever, spat blood onto the forest floor and raised his fists. "Come on then," he growled. "Let's finish this." The bear charged. Thomas charged right back. And then Frank finally found the gun. The explosive crack of the primitive projectile weapon echoed through the forest. The bear stumbled, roared in pain, then collapsed mere feet from Thomas. Silence fell over the forest clearing. After a moment, Thomas slumped to his knees, then toppled sideways onto the ground. Are they both dead?" Jorel asked quietly. Helma checked her monitors. "Negative, Captain. The human's life signs are weak, but stabilizing. The bear is deceased. Impossible, Joral Mutard. Completely impossible." The observation deck remained silent as they watched Frank rush to his friend's side, applying primitive medical aid while talking frantically into a small communication device. Within minutes, more humans arrived in one of their combustion-powered vehicles, carefully loading the injured Thomas inside. The humans departed, leaving the massive predator's corpse cooling in the forest clearing. Jorel finally found his voice again. "New directive," he announced to his stunned crew. "All data from this encounter is to be encrypted and sent directly to High Command with highest priority classification. And send a request for immediate research support." "Sir?" Helma questioned. Jorel's tentacles trembled slightly as he settled back into his command chair. "We have just watched a nearly weaponless primate with no natural defenses deliberately engage an apex predator 3 times its size and win." He paused, all 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "I believe we may have severely underestimated these humans." Commander Draz cleared his throat nervously. "Captain, perhaps this was an anomaly? One particularly aggressive or mentally unstable specimen?" Jorel shook his head slowly. "Access human historical records. Find evidence of similar confrontations between humans and predator species." The crew worked silently for several minutes. Then Pelma looked up, her antennae flat against her head in what the entire crew recognized as the physical manifestation of deep distress. "Sir," she said quietly, "I have found thousands of such records. Humans have been directly engaging predators throughout their entire recorded history. They have specific cultural terminology for it. They call it hunting, and sometimes when weapons fail, they do exactly what we just witnessed. Stars preserve us, Jorel whispered. How do we miss this? There's more, sir, Pelna continued reluctantly. According to their own historical records, humans have driven multiple apex predator species to extinction, not for food or resources, but sometimes simply because they perceive these predators as threats to be eliminated. Jorel stared at the screen, where the enormous bear's corpse still lay in the forest clearing. A creature that, by all natural laws, should have easily dispatched two soft, vulnerable primates. Send a revised report, he said quietly, and add my personal recommendation that the non-interference protocol for Earth be immediately upgraded to maximum priority. These humans, they're not what we thought they were. As the ship continued its silent orbit around the blue planet, Jorel couldn't help but wonder what other surprises these strange, terrifying creatures might have in store. And somewhere in the vast network of the Galactic Alliance, an urgent message began making its way toward High Command. Warning: species assessment, Earth/humans. Previous classification, harmonious. Revised classification, Deathworlders. Recommend extreme caution. 3 galactic standard weeks had passed since the bear incident, as the crew now called it. The atmosphere aboard the Distant Wonder had transformed completely. Where once boredom and dismissive jokes about humans prevailed, now a tense vigilance permeated every corner of the ship. Status report, Captain Jorel demanded as he entered the observation deck. The crew snapped to attention, another new development. No one lounged at their stations anymore. Monitoring 17 human settlements simultaneously, Captain Pelna responded crisply. We have expanded surveillance parameters as ordered. Jorel nodded, settling his weight across his support cushion. An hour, primary subject. Everyone knew exactly which human he meant. Thomas Garrett has been released from their medical facility, Security Chief Marvox reported. Remarkably, he appears to be recovering at an accelerated rate. Their primitive medical technology shouldn't allow for such rapid healing of multiple fractures. Added to the list, Jorel muttered. The list of things humans shouldn't be able to do, but somehow did anyway, was growing disturbingly long. High Command's response to their urgent report had been swift and alarming. Instead of dismissing their observations as anomalous, Central Authority had immediately dispatched 3 additional research vessels to Earth orbit. More concerning, 2 military-class ships now lurked at the edge of the system. As a precaution, they claimed. Captain, Communications Officer Zarda interrupted. Incoming transmission from the Galactic Research Vessel Eternal Inquiry. Admiral Klovax requests immediate conference. Jorel suppressed a shudder. Admiral Klovax, the most decorated xenobiologist in the Alliance fleet and personal advisor to the Supreme Council, had arrived just days ago. His presence alone signified how seriously High Command was taking the human situation. Transfer to my private quarters, Jorel ordered, rising from his command chair. Pelna, you have the deck. Alert me immediately if any interesting human activity occurs. In his quarters, Jorel activated the secure transmission screen. Admiral Klovax's imposing figure materialized, his leathery skin marked with the ceremonial scars of 50 successful first contact missions. Captain Vastic, the Admiral greeted without preamble. Your observation team has gathered extraordinary data. The Council is disturbed. With respect, Admiral, we are simply reporting what we have observed. Jorel replied, cautiously. Klovax's breathing slits flared in what might have been amusement. Indeed, and what you have observed defies centuries of established xenobiological principles. These humans, he paused, mandibles clicking in the gesture universally recognized as profound concern. They are not behaving as evolutionary theory predicts. No, sir, they are not. The Council has approved my recommendation for a more direct investigation, Klovax continued. We need to understand these creatures before making any decisions about their status in galactic affairs. Jorel felt his primary heart skip a beat. Direct investigation? You can't mean? Precisely. We are authorizing limited surface reconnaissance. Small team, fully cloaked, minimal footprint. But the non-interference protocols have been temporarily suspended for Earth. Klovax interrupted sharply. Captain, you don't understand the full picture. The data you have sent doesn't just suggest these humans are unusual. It suggests they may be. The Admiral hesitated, clearly choosing his words carefully. They may be genetically related to the destroyers. Jor-El's respiratory system seized momentarily. The destroyers, a semi-mythical species from the earliest days of galactic history, known only through fragmentary records and the ruins of devastated worlds. Creatures that had apparently waged war against all other sentient life before mysteriously vanishing eons ago. That's impossible, Jor-El whispered. The destroyers were extinct long before mammals even evolved on Earth. So we thought, Klovax replied grimly. But certain genetic markers, certain behavioral patterns. The Council needs to know, Captain, for the safety of all civilized species. Jor-El gathered his courage. What exactly are you ordering, Admiral? I'm leading a surface mission personally. We will observe Thomas Garrett directly. His recovery, his interactions, his physiological responses. You will coordinate from orbit. When? Immediately. Surface team assembles in your transport bay in 1 hour. Klovax's image flickered. And Captain, this conversation never happened. The transmission ended, leaving Jor-El alone with thoughts more disturbing than any he'd entertained in his long career. The surface reconnaissance team consisted of 5 members: Admiral Klovax, 2 security specialists, a medical xenobiologist, and a behavioral analyst. Their transport pod, equipped with the Alliance's most advanced cloaking technology, descended through Earth's atmosphere under cover of night. Back on the distant Wonder, Jor-El watched the operation with mounting anxiety. Landing coordinates confirmed. Navigation Officer Draz reported. They have touched down approximately 2 kilometers from a human Garrett's dwelling. Maintain continuous communication, Jor-El ordered. At the first sign of detection, we extract them immediately. On the main viewer, helmet cameras from the ground team displayed a densely wooded area not unlike where they'd witnessed the bear encounter. The team moved silently through the underbrush, their environmental suits designed to mask all traces of their alien biochemistry. Approaching human habitation came Admiral Klovax's hushed voice over the comm, primitive structure, isolated from main settlement. Thermal imaging shows 2 occupants. The viewer split to show what the Admiral was seeing, a rustic wooden structure nestled against the side of a mountain. Light glowed from several windows, and smoke curled from a stone chimney. Confirmed, the xenobiologist whispered. Target subject Thomas Garrett plus 1 female human, designated Subject B. Proceed with caution, Jor-El advised from orbit. Remember what happened to the bear. A ripple of nervous chuckles came through the comm. The reconnaissance team took positions around the dwelling, deploying miniature sensory probes that would allow them to monitor the humans inside without risking closer approach. Within minutes, data began flowing to both the ground team and the distant Wonder. Fascinating, the medical xenobiologist muttered. Subject Garrett's bone density readings are off the scale. And look at this regeneration rate. The fractures are already 70% healed. That shouldn't be possible without advanced medical intervention. Audio coming through, reported the behavioral analyst. They are arguing? Through the probes, the voices of the humans became clear. Thomas, you are being ridiculous, the female was saying, her tone sharp with exasperation. Dr. Winters said 6 weeks minimum before you even think about going back to work. You nearly died. I'm fine, Amanda, Thomas's now familiar voice replied. Look at me. I'm walking, aren't I? The ribs barely hurt anymore. You fought a bear, Thomas. Normal people don't recover from that in 3 weeks. On the command deck of the distant Wonder, Jor-El exchanged glances with Pelna. Normal people? What did that imply? My family's always been quick healers, Thomas dismissed. Dad was the same way. Remember when he fell off the roof and was back working the next week? That wasn't the same as a bear attack. You had 4 broken ribs, a punctured lung, a dislocated shoulder, and 43 stitches. On Earth, the reconnaissance team had fallen completely silent, hanging on every word. In orbit, the entire command deck was equally transfixed. "Listen," Thomas said, his voice softening. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm going crazy cooped up here. Just let me go check the north traps. 2 hours tops. I promise I will come straight back." "You are impossible," Amanda sighed. "Fiend it. But you take the rifle, and you take your phone, and if you feel even slightly dizzy, you call me immediately." "Yes, ma'am," Thomas replied, and the probe's audio picked up the sound of what the research team had identified as human affection, a kiss. "Ground team," Jorel said urgently. "Subject appears to be preparing to leave the dwelling. Maintain distance." "Acknowledged," Admiral Klovax whispered, repositioning for pursuit. Minutes later, the cabin door opened, and Thomas Garrett emerged into the night air. Even through the grainy probe visuals, the human's quick recovery was remarkable. He moved with only a slight stiffness, carrying one of their primitive projectile weapons and a small illumination device. "Beginning pursuit," Klovax reported, maintaining 50-meter distance. The reconnaissance team followed as Thomas made his way deeper into the forest, occasionally stopping to check small mechanical devices, traps for smaller animals. Pelna explained to the command deck. After approximately 40 minutes of uneventful hiking, Thomas reached a small clearing. He knelt beside one of the traps, examining it carefully. And then everything went wrong. One of the security specialists, moving to get a better observation angle, stepped on a dry branch. The snap echoed through the silent forest like an explosion. Thomas Garrett froze instantly, and on the command deck, Jorel felt his tentacles curl in alarm. "Ground team, maintain cloak. Do not move." But it was too late. Whatever instincts had allowed Thomas to face down a bear were now fully engaged. He doused his light immediately and melted into the shadows with a speed and silence that seemed impossible for his bulky human frame. "I have lost visual," Klovax hissed. "Where did he?" The Admiral's transmission cut off abruptly. "Admiral," Jorel called. "Ground team, report." Silence. Then, through the still-functioning probe audio, they heard Thomas Garrett's voice, low, dangerous, nothing like his previous casual tones. "Don't move," he growled. "Not a muscle. Impossible, Pelna whispered busy joy." He can't see them through the cloaking field. It's absolutely impossible. Yet the probe video feed, now reactivated, showed Thomas standing directly behind Admiral Klovax, the barrel of his rifle pressed against what would be, if he could see it, the Admiral's head. "I don't know who you are or what you are wearing," Thomas continued, "but I can hear you breathing. Military? Some kind of new camo tech. Doesn't matter. You have got 5 seconds to identify yourself before I pull this trigger. Ground team, emergency extraction." Jorel barked. "Prepare for immediate." "No." Admiral Klovax's voice suddenly came through. "Negative on extraction. This is unprecedented. He's detected us through full cloaking technology." For seconds, Thomas counted, his finger visibly tightening on the trigger mechanism. "Human Thomas Garrett," Admiral Klovax said, making a split-second decision that violated centuries of first contact protocols. "We mean you no harm." And then, to the horror of everyone watching from the distant wonder, Admiral Klovax deactivated his cloaking field. The humans' reaction was everything they feared and more. Thomas leapt backward with startling agility, his weapon never wavering as he took in the alien form suddenly visible before him. "What the actual FUCK?" He breathed, eyes widening, but remarkably, showing no sign of the terror or breakdown that xenopsychologists had predicted humans would experience during first contact. Instead, after the initial shock, his expression hardened into something calculating. "There are more of you," he stated rather than asked. "I can hear them. Show yourselves. Now." Reluctantly, following the Admiral's hand signal, the rest of the ground team deactivated their cloaking fields that on the distant wonder. Jorel slumped in his command chair. All protocol and careful planning shattered in an instant. "Prepare immediate extraction," he ordered quietly. "And alert high command. First contact protocols have been initiated." Thomas Garrett, lone human facing 5 alien beings in the darkness of his forest, did perhaps the last thing any of them expected. He laughed. Not the hysterical laughter of a mind breaking, but a genuine, almost relieved sound. Finally, he said, lowering his weapon slightly, I was beginning to think I was crazy. Admiral Klovax, veteran of 50 first contact scenarios, seemed momentarily speechless. You're not surprised by our existence? Thomas shrugged, a gesture the research team had cataloged as indicating casual dismissal. Surprised you are here in my woods? Hell yes. Surprised you exist? The universe is too big for us to be alone. Question is, why are you following me? We observed your encounter with the apex predator 3 cycles ago, Klovax admitted, abandoning all pretense. It concerned us. At this, Thomas actually grinned. The bear? That's what this is about. That's why aliens are sneaking around my property. You should have died, the xenobiologist blurted. No sentient prey species would evolve to directly confront a predator of that size. It defies all evolutionary logic. Thomas's expression darkened slightly. So I've been told. My whole life, actually. He studied them for a long moment. You might as well come back to the cabin. Amanda's going to lose her mind when she sees you, but we have got coffee, though I don't know if you can drink it. Captain, one of the security specialists whispered into the comm, requesting guidance. Jorl, watching the surreal scene unfold, made another snap decision. Proceed with the human's invitation. First contact has already occurred. We might as well gather as much information as possible. And so, in complete violation of every protocol in the Alliance Handbook, 5 of the galaxy's most decorated officers found themselves following a human through dark woods toward his dwelling. So you've been watching us? Thomas asked as they walked. From orbit, I'm guessing. For some time, yes, Admiral Klovax admitted. Your species is unique. Thomas snorted. You have no idea. 20 minutes later, the scene inside the human cabin defied all predictions of human behavior upon first contact. The female human, Amanda, had indeed lost her mind briefly, but her shock had rapidly transformed into intense curiosity. Now she was offering the aliens something called whiskey, while peppering them with questions. So the bear fight is what got your attention? She asked, shaking her head in exasperation. Of course it was. Of all the things, demonstrated capabilities we did not believe possible in your species, Admiral Klovax explained, cautiously examining the amber liquid in his sampling container. Yeah, well, most humans would agree with you, Amanda said with a pointed look at Thomas. Most people don't fight bears hand-to-hand. Most people aren't Garretts, Thomas replied with a shrug. It's in the blood. The xenobiologist perked up instantly. Genetic factors? A familial trait? This confirms our hypothesis. Thomas and Amanda exchanged a look that even the alien observers could read as sudden wariness. What hypothesis? Thomas asked carefully. Admiral Klovax hesitated, then apparently decided that honesty was the only viable path forward. There are legends in our history of a species that once threatened all other sentient life. Physically resilient, aggressive, unnaturally adaptable. They disappeared millennia ago, but you think we are related to them, Thomas finished flatly. The genetic markers are suggestive, the xenobiologist admitted. The 2 humans exchanged another long look, this one impossible for the aliens to interpret. Well, Thomas finally said, you are half right. Explain, Klovax demanded. Thomas took a deep breath. The Garretts have always been different. Stronger, tougher, heal faster. It's why I survived the bear. But we're not the only ones. There are others, scattered bloodlines across the planet. Most try to hide it, live normal lives. You're saying some humans have these enhanced capabilities, but not all, the behavioral analyst clarified. Exactly, Amanda confirmed. Most humans are just regular humans. But some bloodlines carry what Thomas's family calls the old strength. They keep to themselves, try not to draw attention, until they fight bears. Helena muttered from orbit, causing several crew members to stifle nervous laughter. So you're a genetic subset, the xenobiologist was saying excitedly. A remnant population. This explains the inconsistencies in our observations. But what are these enhanced humans? Admiral Klovax pressed. Natural evolution or the descendants of your boogeyman species? Thomas finished with a raised eyebrow. I couldn't tell you. Family stories say we have always been this way, but that hardly answers the question. On the distant wonder, Jor-El watched the unprecedented first contact unfold with growing amazement. Instead of panic or collapse, these humans were engaging with complex interspecies questions with remarkable adaptability. Even the revelation that they might share DNA with the most feared species in galactic history hadn't seemed to faze them. "Captain," Pelnas said quietly beside him, "High Command is demanding updates. The military vessels are moving closer to Earth orbit. They are concerned." Jor-El nodded slowly. "Tell them first contact has been peaceful and informative. Recommend standing down from alert status." "Will they listen?" Pelna asked. "I don't know," Jor-El admitted, "but I'm beginning to think our initial assessment was wrong in multiple ways. These humans aren't just dangerous. They're extraordinarily adaptable." On the viewer, the conversation in the cabin had turned to broader topics: human society, alliance structure, interstellar travel. The two humans absorbed complex new concepts with remarkable speed. "So let me get this straight," Thomas was saying. "You have over 300 member species in this alliance, spread across thousands of star systems, but you are all afraid of us because I punched a bear." "Not merely that," Admiral Klovax clarified. "Your entire species demonstrates concerning traits: territorial expansion, resource consumption, technological development, focused primarily on weapons." "Fair points," Amanda conceded. "We have got issues to work on." "But you are judging all humans by the worst examples," Thomas argued. "For every warmonger, we have got 1,000 people just trying to live peaceful lives. For every environmental destroyer, we have got scientists and activists fighting to protect our world. And what the genetic divergence?" the xenobiologist pressed. "These enhanced humans, they could represent a significant threat if they possess destroyer DNA." Thomas laughed outright at this. "Enhanced humans like me are typically the ones living quietest, most removed from society. Most just want to be left alone in places like this." He gestured around the cabin. "We are not planning galactic domination." From orbit, Jor-El found himself believing the human. Everything in Thomas's micro-expressions, body language, and vocal patterns indicated sincerity, at least according to their still limited understanding of human communication. "Captain," Communications Officer Zarda interrupted urgently. "Priority transmission from High Command. The Supreme Council has reviewed our preliminary reports, and they have authorized preemptive security measures." "What kind of security measures?" Jor-El demanded, though he already feared the answer. "The military vessels have been ordered to prepare planetary containment protocols." Jor-El's blood ran cold. Containment was the Alliance's euphemism for planetary quarantine, isolating potentially dangerous species with orbital weapons platforms designed to prevent any spacecraft from leaving the atmosphere. "Open channel to Admiral Klovax immediately," Jor-El ordered. "Priority override." When the Admiral's face appeared on the private channel, Jor-El didn't waste time with formalities. "They're implementing containment protocols. Admiral, you need to extract now." To his surprise, Admiral Klovax's expression didn't register alarm. Instead, something closer to resignation. "I expected as much, but I believe that would be a mistake, Captain." "Sir, these humans." Klovax glanced over his shoulder to where Thomas and Amanda were still conversing with the rest of the team. "They're not what we feared. Yes, they're dangerous in ways we didn't anticipate. Yes, some carry genetic markers similar to the destroyers. But they're not the same. The Council won't take that chance," Jor-El argued. "Then we must convince them," Klovax stated firmly. "I'm invoking first contact override authority." Jor-El blinked in astonishment. The override was a rarely used protocol that gave first contact specialists authority to supersede even Council directives in the critical early hours of a new species encounter. "What are you proposing, Admiral?" "I'm inviting Representatives Thomas and Amanda Garrett to address the Council directly," Klovax said. "They have agreed to come aboard. You have told them about the containment threat?" Jor-El asked, shocked. "Full transparency, Captain." And her response was enlightening. No panic, no threats. Thomas simply asked what he could do to help prevent unnecessary conflict. 6 hours later, the Distant Wonder's main observation deck had been hastily converted into an impromptu council chamber. The holographic presences of the 7 Supreme Counselors flickered into existence, their diverse alien forms representing the founding species of the Alliance. Thomas and Amanda Garrett stood before them, remarkably composed for humans experiencing their first day of extraterrestrial contact. "Representatives of Earth," began the Central Counselor, a gaseous entity contained within an ornate hovering sphere, "you stand before us under most unusual circumstances. Your species presents a unique challenge to our established protocols." "With respect," Thomas replied, "from our perspective, you are the ones who have been secretly watching our planet and are now threatening to lock us in our own solar system." A ripple of something like shocked amusement passed through the council. "The human has a point," acknowledged the crystalline counselor, her faceted body refracting light across the chamber. "Our fears may have driven us to hasty judgment. We simply asked for the chance to prove ourselves," Amanda added. "Yes, humanity has flaws. Yes, some of us, like Thomas, carry genetic quirks that make us different. But quarantining an entire species based on ancient fears and one incident with a bear seems disproportionate. The genetic markers cannot be dismissed," insisted the aquatic counselor, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "If these enhanced humans carry destroyer DNA, then we have carried it for thousands of years without becoming galaxy-conquering monsters," Thomas interrupted. "Whatever connection might exist, we are not them." From his position at the edge of the chamber, Jor-El watched with growing admiration as the 2 humans calmly and rationally defended their species against accusations spanning genetic heritage to resource consumption patterns. They acknowledged human flaws without defensiveness, but pushed back firmly against generalizations. Most impressively, they showed no fear, not of the Council, not of the technology surrounding them, not even of the implied threat against their planet. They simply engaged, adapted, and advocated with remarkable clarity. After 3 hours of intensive questioning, the Central Counselor called for a recess. The holograms winked out, leaving the humans alone with the ship's officers. "You did well," Admiral Klovax told them. "Better than any first contact species in my experience." Thomas shrugged. "Not like we had much choice. But thanks. What do you think they will decide?" Amanda asked Jor-El directly. The captain considered the question carefully. "I believe you have given them significant reason to reconsider the containment protocols. Your responses were unexpectedly reasonable. What were you expecting?" Thomas asked with a hint of amusement. "That I try to fight them like the bear?" Historical precedent suggested a high probability of psychological breakdown or aggression upon first contact, Pelnar admitted. "Your adaptability is remarkable." "That's humans for you," Amanda said with a small smile. "Throw us into the deep end, and we will either sink or learn to swim really fast." When the council reconvened, their decision took even Jor-El by surprise. "The council has determined that immediate containment is unwarranted," announced the Central Counselor. "Instead, we propose a graduated contact protocol. Admiral Klovax will establish an official diplomatic mission to Earth, working with the Garretts and other selected humans to introduce galactic society gradually to your species. And enhanced humans," Thomas asked carefully, "will be studied with full consent and transparency," the crystalline counselor stipulated. "If you are indeed distant relatives of the destroyers, perhaps you can help us understand what happened to them and why they disappeared." As the formal proceedings concluded, Jor-El found himself standing beside Thomas Garrett on the observation deck, both looking down at the blue-green planet below. "Your world is beautiful," Jor-El offered. "Strange and somewhat terrifying, but beautiful." Thomas laughed. "That's a pretty good summary of humanity, too." "Indeed," Jor-El agreed. "I must ask, weren't you afraid? When you faced the bear, when you discovered aliens watching you, when brought before the Galactic Council?" Thomas considered the question seriously. "Sure, I felt fear, but fear doesn't have to control you. Sometimes you have to look fear in the eye and say not today. A very human perspective, Jorel observed. Maybe so, Thomas acknowledged, but effective. The bear backed down first. Jorel's tentacles curled in what humans would soon learn was the equivalent of a smile. So did the council. 3 days later, as Thomas and Amanda Garrett returned to Earth with Admiral Klovax's diplomatic team, Jorel recorded his final entry in the Distant Wonders official mission log. Initial observation of species. Human/Earth completed. Previous classification. Harmonious. Revised classification. Deathworlders. Final classification. Potential allies. Recommend careful optimism. As the Distant Wonder prepared for its next assignment, Jorel couldn't help but wonder what the galaxy would look like once these strange, resilient, contradictory humans fully joined galactic society. One thing was certain: it would never be the same again. And somewhere on Earth, a bear's distant cousin continued its peaceful existence, blissfully unaware that its relative's encounter with a particularly stubborn human had just changed the course of galactic history forever.